Welcome back to the Bob Fu Report. As we all know, China has already become a digital surveillance police state, which means inside the Chinese territory, under this so-called big data program with the billions of face recognition cameras and other cloud services, with the internet police surrounding everywhere. Every Chinese citizen basically is under this digital authoritarian tyranny right now. So every moment, every habit you have, every actions, including your social actions, your business transactions, all the records now are under the extreme type of scrutiny. So basically, the Chinese Communist Party and its state security forces right now does not really need to show up to those like house churches or political dissidents or those petitioners to where they are before they can grasp most of their details of their location, the timing, their activities that they are engaging. So one of my good friends, a human rights lawyer, he just traveled to Shanghai to really register as a legal representative of a dissident, a guy who was arrested for posting a few articles without the permission. And so he took a train and went to Shanghai. As soon as he showed up at the Shanghai train station, he found his smartphone, the very app called health app, 健康码. Every Chinese, old or young, students or workers or civil servant to enterprise, the entrepreneurs, has to carry your smartphone with that specific app in the name of the tracking your COVID-19 status. Well, he just got off the train, turned on his smartphone. He found his the color was changed from green to yellow. I mean, if he had any COVID test or any result, that's one matter. It may showed different result, but he took a train, just got to the train station and found the color of his health app turned to yellow. So which means if your color turned to yellow, you are becoming a public hazard, basically being treated as a dangerous person, like you are carrying or you have the potential of carrying a virus. And which means everyone surrounding you, so their smartphone would be alerted. So the Communist Party security agents does not need to be there. Everyone else, the citizens, just surrounding him, stared at him like, why are you here? You're dangerous. You're carrying a virus. So he became the instant public state enemy. So that will prevent him from moving further. So he immediately, according to the instruction, had to go to a hotel to do self-quarantine. So he doesn't need to get even a warrant for house arrest or being charged for anything. And he knew what kind of crime he had been committed is to represent a legal case as a lawyer. So that's kind of the digital tyranny society look like. The Chinese Communist Party is certainly not satisfied with their repressive actions or surveillance tactics inside its territory. And now the world has found the Communist Party has already engaging the so-called transnational repressive steps. Not only just doing this kind of repressive, suppressive actions inside China to the Chinese citizens living there, but now they are extending its Communist Party arms into other parts of the world, as far as 7,000 miles away to the campus of Purdue University. Back to December 2021, there has been a report that a Chinese student who is studying at Purdue University, one of, I think, 200 Chinese students over there enrolled that year. And his name is Zhang Chenghao. So Mr. Kong, he just registered at a dissident website to basically participate a commemoration of Tiananmen Square moment, a massacre. Basically, I was there 3 years ago, and the Communist Party tried every way to erase that memory. So no textbook, no Chinese official document from any classroom, any history book is allowed to even mention that the massacre or the students' moment happened at the Tiananmen Square in 1989. And so this student from China, he just tried to register he expressed his opinion. And guess what? The next day, his parents were both visited by the China's Ministry of State Security. It's basically an equivalent of our CIA. And the agents threatened them. Basically said, if your son continue to participate in this event, your life will be impacted. At the same time, the Chinese Communist Party started mobilizing other Chinese students who are studying in American soil, 7,000 miles away from China, at Purdue University at Indiana, start harassing this student, Mr. Kong, threatening him. So this is kind of the transnational tyranny is manifested inside the US soil. This is just one example. And thankfully, the university president, Mitch Daniels, wrote a public letter to the students' body in Purdue University. Basically told them this kind of intimidation of freedom of speech at Purdue University campus is not acceptable. Here's what Mitch Daniels said. He said, any such intimidation is unacceptable and unwelcome on our campus. So Daniels wrote of his treatment here in the States. He said Purdue has punished less personal, direct, and threatening conduct. Anyone taking exception to the speech in question had their own right to express their disagreement, but not to engage in the action of harassment, which occurred here in the campus. So Daniel acknowledged that international students are nothing new at Purdue. He said, yeah, they're welcomed from a century ago. I mean, nearly 200 of them are Chinese, enrolled again this fall. He further said, by joining the Purdue community requires acceptance of its rules and values, and no value is more central to our institution or to our higher education generally than the freedom of inquiry and expression. Those seeking to deny these rights to others, let alone to collude with foreign governments in repressing them, will need to pursue their education elsewhere, maybe back to Beijing, maybe back to their own corner to continue receive the Communist Party's propaganda and brainwash. If you want to be a communist, go back to your communist campus. Don't come to the United States just to try to learn something about freedom here, at the same time to be a spy, spying your fellow students in American campuses, and also report back to the Chinese state security agents to threatening his family members. And friends, this is not just one exception. There are tons of students, 100,000 Chinese students. Many of them were recruited, wittingly or unwittingly, by the Chinese state security before they even land in the US. They are recruited as the informants or spies in the campus of MIT, Harvard, Princeton, and many other universities, public schools, private schools, UC Berkeley, anywhere. I mean, we all learned. The university professors from Princeton University, Harvard University, during their COVID lockdown time, when they are engaging the virtual study, they have to make a number for each of their virtual classroom Chinese students, so that when these students were expressing their opinion in the virtual classroom, they won't be reported back to China, won't be punished. Their parents won't be visited, threatened, and even jailed. So these are happening in our campuses. And these things are happening in Australia, in Europe. So what could we do? I mean, we hosted a conference back to December, right around the International Human Rights Day, early December 2021. We invited the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, my good friend Scott Busby, And he, on behalf of the Biden administration, he made a speech. Here's what he said. He said sanctions on these individuals implicated in serious abuses. I mean, not only in Xinjiang, but also who committed transnational intimidation, harassment, and threats. So basically, we have seen the Communist Party has not only using its suppressive laws to arbitrarily arrest of those dissidents and of course committing genocide in Xinjiang against over 1 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other religious minorities, of course Christians too, but also harass them online. And in other ways they are abuse in an abusive way the international law enforcement mechanism, such as the Interpol. And the Interpol had been used and manipulated by the Chinese government for very long. We have seen in our own experience at ChinaAid how the Communist Party misused the Interpol. When we rescued a few people to Thailand, the Chinese government just like after the U.S. already processed their paperwork, like Professor Victoria Chen Guiqiu, and her 2 children, and another business billionaire. They were all accepted into the U.S. They already checked in their luggage at Bangkok International Airport. All of a sudden, when they tried to pass the immigration, and the Communist Party put them on the Interpol red alert, essentially 5-year-old, 15-year-old girls, of the daughters of Professor Chen Guiqiu, became the dangerous criminal animal, like on the wanted list of Chinese Communist Party through its Interpol privileged system. So they're not allowed to get out of Thailand. So in the end, they were asked to go back to Thailand soil. So the U.S. administration government has to take some very, very radical action in order to rescue them in the end. We have seen the 60+ members from the Holy Reformed Church, also known as Mayflower Church, who escaped from Shenzhen City next to Hong Kong to Jeju Island in South Korea. After they got there, unfortunately, being denied asylum by the South Korean government is a direct result of the intimidation and threat, by the Chinese Communist Party against the sovereign nation of South Korea. So South Korea keep denying their asylum claim and their appeals. At the same time, the Chinese consulate in Jeju and the Chinese state security agents directly calling these peaceful church members who are seeking asylum, threatening them, and telling them they are committing basically the betrayal of the country. Basically, it's like treason. Call them treasonous. Pastor Pan, who is the senior pastor, said even one of these charges is being filed if he was forced to return to China. That carries a life sentence in prison. Treason. And many other cases ChinaAid had helped, like Wang Jingyu and his fiancée Wu Huan. They were kidnapped at UAE International Airport, and while their transition just transferred to Turkey. And not only they were arrested arbitrarily, but the UAE handed them over to China. And the Chinese Communist Party, their diplomats became interrogators and also put them in a China-managed extrajudicial black jail run by the Communist Party diplomats in Dubai, UAE. And now that kind of black jails are found by the international investigators in Indonesia, in Cairo, Egypt, and in many other countries, and many Uyghurs, and ironically, many of them are Muslim countries. They are arbitrarily arresting, kidnapping these Uyghurs, Kazakhs, who are just fleeing to Turkey and other countries for safety, and yet they are arrested and put in the Communist Party-run jails, black jail, underground prison in these countries. So we should do more. I think the free world should do more, and I was very happy to learn, of course, after the speech by the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary Scott Busby in our event. A week later, the State Department imposed some serious sanctions, restrictions on technology firms aiding in the capture and incarceration of Uyghurs, Tibetans, and others. The State Department and the Treasury Department included 37 new entities on the entity list for sanctions, which means these companies cannot be put on the U.S. stock market. These companies cannot receive U.S. advanced technologies because these groups, they use the U.S. biotechnology, including AI technology for brain control, mind control in a remote way. So no wonder many dissidents now told me that they found the Chinese Communist Party somehow use this kind of technology can remotely control their mind once they are subject for some time of in these camps. So friends, when you travel not only to China, just close to China, don't bring your own computer, laptops, or other personal electronics, because you know you are being watched and monitored. And to those who are attending the Olympics, athletes, good luck. You are in the Communist Party's surveillance park. You are a guinea pig in their experiment. So be careful. But let's all work together to contain this virus, the Communist Party virus, and so that freedom can prevail one day, not only to the 1.4 billion people, but now to the whole world, especially those of you, if you're still on your phone, installed WeChat, TikTok, just be aware that you have a listening, monitoring device the Communist Party can manipulate anytime, from your bedroom to your living room to your classroom. May God continue to bless the free world so that we can be alert and vigilant, and this malign Communist Party would be demised one day, hopefully sooner. God bless you. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bob, for that report. Jonathan Dingler, I'm going to be bringing you updates from the house churches and Christians in China today. Our first update is from a previous report here from the Bob Fu report from An Yankui and his members of his church. As viewers may recall, 5 Christians were charged with illegally crossing the national border for attending a gospel conference in Myanmar. An Yankui and Zhang Chenghao were also arrested for the same charge months later. and they have not yet received a trial. The 5 Christians, however, as previously reported, testified in front of the court, in front of the judge, their faith, and defended their legal rights for all the witnesses present. Unfortunately, these Christians were charged and found guilty. One of the Christians was charged with 6 months. 2 of them were charged for 7, and 2 for 8 months. Please be praying for those Christians and their families. On the other hand, Guo Huan, the wife of Zhang Chenghao, who was arrested with Yankui, has recently sued an official on the case for her husband's arrest. She sued him on several counts, mostly for the fact that the officers confiscated a lot of their goods and property without returning them, but also 3 other charges: for organizing a task force illegally and filing the case wrongly, illegally blocking lawyers' visitations, and the person in charge of the case is on suspicion of bending the law for selfish ends and abuse of power. As of right now, there's been no update on these legal proceedings. Be sure to check out ChinaAid.org for more information. Our final story today comes from Gao Heng, who famously was arrested on the 32nd anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre for posting an image online with him holding a sign in front of a subway station saying, quote, "June 4, pray for the country." He was arrested later that evening and formally charged a little over a month later in July of 2021. And his secret trial has officially been announced for later this month here in February. A secret trial is essentially where the Chinese Communist Party limits the family and who can attend the trial based on national security secrets. That's all here today at the Bob Fu Report. God bless you and have a good one.